Hi everyone, I'm Ed Schupman. I'm manager of national education here at the National Museum of the American Indian. And I'm also a citizen of the Muskogee Creek Nation of Oklahoma. I hope you're all doing well today. Hope you've been enjoying the teach-in. I want to welcome you to the virtual National Museum of the American Indian. And thank you for coming to my session today on American Indian responses to environmental challenges. At the National Museum of the American Indian, our education work is centered around a national initiative that we call Native Knowledge 360. Our goal is to transform teaching and learning about Native Americans because there's such a long and problematic history of the ways in which our country has taught about Native peoples. And there's been such a shortage of good resources for educators and training to help them in this work. Native Knowledge 360 includes the creation of educational resources, a variety of teacher training opportunities, such as the one you're participating in today, and numerous partnerships with organizations around the country. I'm here to talk about the work that American Indian nations, specifically the tribal governments and their citizens, are doing today to combat environmental issues in their homelands. We're going to be exploring this topic through one of our Native Knowledge 360 online resources, titled the same as my session, American Indian Responses to Environmental Challenges. The website URL for this resource is listed at the bottom of the slide. We actually created this resource back in 2012, and we recently gave it a technological update to keep its functionality current. So it's all refreshed now and working as it's supposed to. My objectives for this session are a couple of things. First of all, I do want to share the organization and functionality of this educational resource with you so that you'll know how to access it, how to use it, some of the activities that are embedded in it, and you'll be able to then work with your students with this resource. But I'm also eager to explore the motivations and the specific work that these Native nations are doing today to combat environmental issues in their homelands. And we'll be exploring that through 4 case studies. Before we begin to explore the site, though, I'd like to talk about a couple of key ideas that might help set the stage for your understanding of this environmental work. Part of our work with Native Knowledge 360 is focused on breaking down stereotypes, false narratives, incomplete narratives, and even racist narratives that people have learned and perpetuated about Native Americans. We want to help educators view Native people through a new lens in ways that they might not have thought of before, so that their teaching can become more accurate, more inclusive, and more comprehensive. Let's start with the question that you see on screen. Some of you might be old enough to remember this ad campaign. In the ad, Iron Eyes Cody, an Italian-American actor, portrays a Native American who is looking at severely polluted waterways. The camera zooms in on his face to reveal tears running down his cheek. I'd like to ask you to participate with me a little bit here. I'd like you to answer this question. Are Native Americans the first environmentalists? I will say that there was an article recently in NPR, National Public Radio, about this ad. And it talked about the great impact that this ad had in kind of shaping public attitudes and really capturing the emotion and making that more of a common point of view. So I'm starting to see some replies, maybe yes, maybe no, sure, along with other ancient cultures. So the answer to this is complex. Maybe a little yes, but I would say mostly no. Environmentalism, environment, environmentalist, those are 20th century terms and concepts that don't really apply to historical narratives. They weren't part of the traditional languages. They weren't part of people's vocabulary or a concept that they talked about or thought about. The attempt to make that comparison is a generalized oversimplification, really, of complex long-standing culture-based relationships with place. But as you know from meeting Winona LaDuke earlier, some Native Americans today are deeply involved in environmental activism and doing incredibly important work to support environmental justice. So how can you understand these deep Native American connections to and work with the environment? As I said, it's complex and it's challenging because you're trying to understand deeply ingrained cultural concepts, worldviews, histories that are most likely foreign to you. No matter how much empathy we have, it's difficult for us as 21st century people to understand these ideas, to comprehend the world and our relationship to it as historical Native people did and Native people do today, as it's passed down through their culture. But we do have a tool on our NK360 website to help give you some new perspectives about Native Americans. The Essential Understandings are a framework that supports more comprehensive thinking and education about Native Americans. They're based on the 10 themes of the National Council for the Social Studies, as you see here. We then wrote key concepts under each of the 10 themes. I'd like to encourage you to take a closer look at our Essential Understandings. The URL is listed here, and you can find it on our NK360 website. You'll notice that our Essential Understanding number 3 is about Native American people, places, and environments. And of course, it's relevant for our topic today. So let's take a little closer look at that Essential Understanding. I'd like to just share a little bit. This is from our website, the NK360 website. When you navigate to Essential Understandings and look at Essential Understanding 3, our anchor idea here is that for thousands of years, Indigenous people have studied, managed, honored, and thrived in their homelands. These foundations continue to influence American Indian relationships and interactions with the land today. And just the first key concept there, the story of American Indians in the Western Hemisphere is intricately intertwined with places and environments. Native knowledge systems resulted from long-term occupation of tribal homelands and observation and interaction with places. American Indians understood and valued the relationship between local environments and cultural traditions and recognized that human beings are part of the environment. Another concept that I'd like to spend a little bit of time with is the idea of tribal sovereignty. Now, there's a lot of academic and legal conversations and discussions about what tribal sovereignty really means. But you can define it as the inherent right to self-govern within the United States. Native American nations have always been autonomous, sovereign nations, long before Europeans arrived. They had diplomacy with other tribal nations, they made agreements, they fought wars, and functioned as independent nations. When Europeans began to arrive here, Native nations were recognized as nations. And this continued when the United States became a country. And treaties that were established and made with the United States and other nations affirmed this status as tribally sovereign nations. And this status has been affirmed and upheld many times in our history as in legislative acts, court decisions, and presidential acts. So as we spend time with this educational website today, it's helpful to understand that this is the ongoing work of sovereign Native nations to protect their homelands, their cultures, and their economies through environmental work, and to understand the motivations behind that work. So now we're going to turn our attention to the American Indian Responses to Environmental Challenges website. And I'm going to switch to live on this website. Give me a moment to share my screen with you. So what you're looking at is the homepage for the National Museum of the American Indian. And we're going to navigate from this website to our environmental challenges website. There are a couple of ways you can get there currently. You scroll down the page and you start to see some different features. One of them is our Native Knowledge 360 homepage there. Click on that, or you can use the hamburger menu located in the corner. You click on education. There's a lot of good information in here for educators. We really encourage you to come to our site and explore it. We're going to start today with lessons and resources. We have a variety of informational resources, featured items, and we're going to look at our instructional resources tab. Here we have a search engine. You could actually type in the word environment and we would go to the site that we're looking for today. We also have it featured down here under our STEM resources. And so we click on that, we come to something we call a detail page. On this page, you can get some general information about the site, the grade levels that it's recommended for, the native nations that it covers, the subjects it's related to, the regions of the country, some keywords. We also cite the NMAI Essential Understandings that it addresses, but also the academic standards that are addressed. There are also a series of related resources. So if you want to take a look at what these offer, they are also related to this idea of environmental work. So from here, I click this button and there we are. We are in the live site. So the first thing that I would like to do is show you that we have 4 case studies here. There are 4 tribal nations featured and from 4 different cultures and 4 different geographic locations around the country. The first is the Akwesasne Mohawk. They're located in upstate New York. The issue that they're dealing with is the preservation of black ash trees. We also have the Campo Kumeyaay Nation located in Southern California. The issue that they're addressing is the wetlands restoration and the protection of water in their community. The Leech Lake Ojibwe are located in northern Minnesota, and they are looking at protecting and preserving wild rice. And finally, the Lummi Nation, located in Washington State, and their work is to save salmon. So up here in the top navigation, you see the home page that we're on now. You can click into any of these 4 case studies. There you also see something called a student project and teacher resources. So teacher resources are always a great place to start. And just to show you, when you click on that page, you get some general information about the website. You have lesson plans. We've got a couple of different options there for you if you want to get some ideas for instruction. We have a short lesson plan that's 1 or 2 class periods, 50-minute class periods, and then one that's longer, maybe 4 to 5 class periods. Again, we cite the academic standards. You also here have background information on each of these 4 Native communities. So you can click into that, and this is primarily information for teachers. It's just about 1 page each, but it's just to give you a little more information on these communities. And we have additional resources, books, websites, and so on, if you want to explore those, maybe get some additional materials for yourself or your students. I also want to point out this feature called a reset progress. You'll see in a minute that we have a progress tracker in this website. And anytime you want to reset the progress, if students are sharing a computer and one student has finished his or her work, you can actually go in and reset the progress on the computer so that the progress indicator will start new for a different student. So that's kind of a nice feature. I'll talk more about the student project in just a minute. So at this point, what I'd like to do is to give you a good sense of the content of the stories themselves. The content in this resource comes primarily from the videos. This is where students will learn about the environmental issue, how the community's culture is connected to the issue, what they're doing to address it, and why they're doing this work. So we're going to watch a few of these sample videos. What I'd like to do is ask you along with me to do a kind of simple analysis of what we're hearing. It is it's a good opportunity for a 5 W's kind of activity, a who, where, when, and why, what, when, and why. If you have some paper handy, you might want to make yourself a little graphic organizer with those headings and space to take notes for each video that we'll watch. So I think I'm going to switch over now to the video.
Welcome, moi. That means hello. May your heart always burn with fire.
The Campo Kumeyaay Nation is located on a small reservation in Southern California near the Mexican border. They are one band of a tribe that once occupied a large area of what is now Southern California and northern Mexico. The people of the Campo Kumeyaay Nation have lived for thousands of years in a region where water is a precious resource. Water is important to their survival and to their history and culture. Today, the Campo people are facing challenges to their supply of fresh water.
We say the creators came from a place of water, a place of salt water. When they created this universe, all that there was around was water. And as they continued to make the land and build the land up, they knew that water was part of everything. Our word for creator is Maiha, which means the water above. And it's a very sacred thing.
The Kumeyaay people in San Diego County are currently separated into 12 different bands. This wasn't the way we lived historically. We had clans. They were called Shimulks. Most of the clans did a migration every year up through the drainages, and they would go back down to the lower elevations during the wintertime to escape the severe weather that we'd have up in the mountains. Well, each clan had a leader. He was called the Quaipai, and the Quaipai was the one who made the decisions on behalf of the clan. But the Quaipai was not a dictator. He ruled through consent.
The Spanish arrived in Kumeyaay territory in 1769, the Mexicans in 1822, and the Americans in 1846. Each group brought changes to where and how the Kumeyaay people lived, and to the environment.
So people didn't really live year-round up here at the higher elevations until the coastal lands were taken after the arrival of the Spanish. Starting around the 1870s, the cattlemen moved up into this area. They brought with them the windmill technology. They were able to sink wells and have mechanical means for bringing that water to the surface. And so that expanded a lot of the cattle grazing that previously had been restricted down into the lower areas.
When we found out what the cattle were doing to our water with high nitrates, stream bank erosion, it made a big difference to me and to the tribal members.
Originally, there was a treaty that was negotiated in 1852 with the United States, but this treaty was undermined by the legislative lobby from the state of California, and so our treaty was not ratified. So we had hundreds of Indian people living all over the rural areas in little clusters where they had no rights of citizenship, they had no rights to go out and claim land on the very land that they and their ancestors had been living on for thousands of years. They were people without a country, essentially. Many Indians became the cowboys on the ranches and worked for them. They also worked in agriculture. They had to leave behind the elderly and the women and the children, and in many cases women became the spokesmen for the tribal communities.
The establishment of the Campo and other Kumeyaay reservations in the late 1800s brought further hardships to the Indian people.
There was very little that could be done on the reservation without the consent of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. There was a prohibition against traditional religious practices. There were prohibitions on certain types of dress, how you cut your hair, where you went to school. Up until 1940, Indian children were not allowed to go to the public schools.
Despite the many changes the Campo and other Kumeyaay people have endured, they have their own tribal government today.
And in 1975, the tribe adopted its first constitution, which created the position of chairman and 6 other elected officials that would be the executive branch of the tribe.
They are also working hard to preserve their Kumeyaay language and culture.
They forcibly took the children away and forced them to speak English and not speak their own language. Part of our own healing is to, go back and learn the language. This is what we are as a people. This is the language that we believe was given to us by the Creator.
So, what do we learn in this video? I think it's a very rich video. And first of all, we had a traditional greeting from the tribal chairwoman. We learned a lot about the history of the Kumeyaay people, deep cultural connections to water, the importance of water, the traditional creation story, and even their word for the Creator is a word that means the water above. We learned that their water sources are threatened today. We learned about their clans and their social organization and leadership structure, the effects of different invasions, the Spanish, the Mexicans, and the Americans, and the arrival and impact of large-scale cattle grazing. They talked about the treaty making and early life on the reservation, but survival and the tribal government now and the preservation of language and culture. Later on in this case study, as you would go through these chapters, and in each of these chapters, there are 5 sections: meet the people, about our homeland, our environmental challenge, our strategies, and our future. So we watched the video, Meet the People. In the subsequent sections, you learn about the work that the Kumeyaay are doing. And they have an amazing story. Kumeyaay people were land managers. Before Europeans arrived, they did controlled burning. They did broadcast seed planting. They managed plants, and they also managed water. And they had a traditional technique that they used to slow water down. When it rains hard and when the water is washing through this land, it can create these deep gullies and what they call arroyos. And so to stop that erosion, they would put these rocks into these stream beds, and it would slow the water down, and it would hold the water in, keep the water table up, would provide an environment for plants to grow, the different kinds of medicines, the different kinds of plants that they use to make their cultural objects. So it's a really remarkable story. I hope you'll get a chance to listen to the other videos. We're going to jump now to a different location, and we are going to listen to Leech Lake, Meet the People.
The Leech Lake Band is part of the Ojibwe tribe, one of the largest American Indian tribes in the United States. Spread across 5 U.S. states and 3 Canadian provinces, the Ojibwe people are also known as the Anishinaabe, meaning the original people. They are sometimes called Chippewa, but Ojibwe is the favored term among the Leech Lake Band. Traditional Ojibwe culture, values, and beliefs are closely tied to the land on which they live.
There are connections we have to the fish. There are connections we have to the birds and the trees and the rocks and the animals. Our job here as humans, we're gifted with so much from everyone around us, from the trees and from the rocks, from the water, from everyone around us. We don't just take and take and take. We have a responsibility to take care of those gifts because we do have an ability as human beings. We have an ability to think and see ahead and make choices in our lives.
For the Ojibwe, one of the most important foods is wild rice, or manoman. Monoman is a centerpiece of nutrition and a gift to the Ojibwe from the Creator. Wild rice plays an important role in Ojibwe teachings.
They say that long ago that our people, we lived out on the East Coast. One of the prophecies that was given to us was that we would be leaving that place and we would be journeying west until we came to a place where food grew on the water, and that is at Monoman.
For centuries, the Leech Lake people and other Ojibwe have harvested the wild rice that grew abundantly in the shallow lakes of the region.
Historically, the Ojibwe people relied on the wild rice. The wild rice is used as part of ceremonies and other traditional activities. It's a very important part of Ojibwe culture.
The word Monoman almost has the sense of a life force. It has been so entwined in the culture that it obviously can't be seen as simply a food resource.
When a child is born, when somebody dies, when we have birthday parties, everything we do at the beginning of the season, whether it's first rice or first berries or first fish, we always have a feast. And we're told that we always got to have rice there. If nothing else, we got to have rice. So we always do. And we're fortunate to have a lot of wild rice here.
But according to scientists, half the wild rice in the Great Lakes region has disappeared over the past century. Their findings confirm what many Ojibwe elders have noticed. Pollution, invasive species, and development are threatening the rice crop.
The range of wild rice and the amount of wild rice and the amount of lakes that are holding wild rice is decreasing.
They say that whatever happens to your food will happen to the people.
True to their teachings about caring for the environment, the Leech Lake people are taking steps to preserve, restore, and manage the wild rice beds of the Leech Lake Reservation.
So our responsibility is also to help them keep this place livable and viable for the future. Yeah, that's one of our basic teachings. So one of the very first important things we learn as Anishinaabe people.
So again, we were hearing from the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe in northern Minnesota. Again, it was the Meet the People video. We learned about the great size of the Ojibwe nation, that there are many different groups of Ojibwe covering a large region of the Great Lakes region up into Canada. Learned about terminology, the use of the word Ojibwe, sometimes Chippewa, and Anishinaabe. The cultural ties, the connections to everything that's around us. And as human beings, with our ability to think rationally, to make choices, to make decisions, our responsibility is to care for these gifts. We learned about this, almost the sacredness of wild rice, that it's a gift from the Creator, and that there was a prophecy that was given to the Ojibwe people a long time ago when they lived on the East Coast, and they were told that they would be going west to a place where the food grew on the water. We learned that wild rice, that Monoman, is part of ceremonies and public events. It's a food staple. We learned that it's threatened by pollution, invasive species, and development, and that they're undertaking work to preserve, restore, and manage. We saw a lot of people from college-level educators and culture and language teachers, water specialists, and people in the community who are working on this issue for the Leech Lake Ojibwe. I have one more video to share with you. And we are going to go to the Pacific Northwest now.
The Lummi people feel that it's their responsibility to help the salmon survive.
It's our inherent right to do it, and it's slowly disappearing, so we have to do something to rescue it.
I think that everybody feels strongly that our salmon live on, you know, and it's an instinct that, because we are salmon people. And if the salmon die, it's almost like we'll die. You know, we're not just stepping back and letting it happen, we're stepping up and doing something about it.
It's like repairing Mother Nature. It means a lot to me to be able to say that I was helped replace some of the scars and wounds that was inflicted upon Mother Nature.
We have our own fisheries natural resources department that takes the lead, not only on our tribe, but I think in the state, keeping data and records. And we have our own fish hatchery and oyster hatcheries here that we do research on salmon and shellfish.
You bring them back to habitat, we'll bring back the fish.
The Lummi Nation Natural Resources Department is involved in many kinds of projects to fix the damaged salmon habitat.
I've been director for 25 years. We have about 8 main departments, that I oversee.
The Lummies have built many log jams in the Nooksack River. Log jams are an important part of the salmon's habitat.
A long time ago, there used to be a policy where they took out all the logs. The state said they're bad, and so they took out all the logs, and now we're putting them back in, log jams back in. I mean, the habitat is key, for the salmon.
And what the log jams do is they create shelter for juveniles as they're migrating upstream. They create pools, and the pools are deep, and the water is cooler, and there's shade, and it protects them from predators. And there's food for them, leaves, bugs collect in there.
Trees are also important to salmon habitat, so the Lummies are replanting areas where trees have been removed.
All the conifers that you see here were interplanted. We do the interplanting to reintroduce conifers into areas where there is no conifers.
They're improving drainage in critical areas. This helps decrease erosion and keeps the streams from becoming clogged with soil runoff. It takes many partners working together to bring the salmon back. The Lummies work with government agencies, public and private organizations, and other American Indian groups to help the salmon population recover.
We are involved with planning for cuts where a lot of these forest companies go. If you cut these trees, does that mean this whole area is going to slide off into a stream somewhere? Or is it stable enough to cut? And we're involved in helping make those decisions with the Department of Natural Resources as well as Department of Fisheries here in the state of Washington.
This 10 Mile Creek project with the 4 Mile Creek tributary is an example of partnership and cooperation. So this was an imperative from the Department of Ecology to clean up particularly the dairy farms and the berry farms, because the Lummi tribe had a shellfish industry and it was all closed down after the pollution from the farmers resulted in the water quality deteriorating downstream.
I'm standing in front of all these trees that we planted last year as little plugs. They were donated by the county government and the farmers. We've given away well over 70,000 trees for stream enhancements. The Lummi Indians need to have fish. It's only the right thing to do to have an environment that fish can come in. It's only the right thing to do to have an environment that's clean and pristine.
The Lummi are increasing the salmon population by raising fish in facilities called hatcheries.
The salmon are spawned, the eggs are taken and incubated and hatched, and eventually put into a pond where they're fed until they become a size where they can be released into the ocean to go and mature and return back to where they came from.
The Lummi Natural Resources Hatchery at Skookum Creek cooperates with the Washington State Hatchery at Kendall Creek to rescue endangered South Fork Spring Chinook salmon.
What we do in this room is once the fish are brought in from the wild, we start feeding them our hatchery food. So once they reach maturity, the fish will be transferred back to Skookum Hatchery, which is where they'll be spawned, and their eggs and the small fry that hatch from them will be released from Skookum. They'll travel over 30 miles in the fresh water. and then they'll go out into the ocean where they can travel up to 2,500 miles. Some have been found up in Alaska and Canada, where they then return back to their birthplace, to Skookum Hatchery, to spawn.
The Lummi children of today will be the next generation to care for the salmon. They are learning about the science tied to bringing the salmon back. At the Lummi Nation School, students are raising juvenile salmon, called fry, which they release every spring into the waters on their lands. As the students' fry are released, an elder leads a ceremony.
We're here to do a ceremony for the little salmon that we're going to release in the creek here. So be respectful, honoring the spirits that are here to witness the release of these babies into the creek. Praying that they'll be back in 4 years to bring us meat for the winter.
So again, there's a lot of information in there that, really gives insight into the, why the Lummi Nation are doing this work. The salmon are tied to Lummi identity. They call themselves salmon people. They're doing work to repair the wounds to Mother Nature. That the Tribal Resources Department has a variety of activities that they do. Fish and oyster hatcheries, they keep data, they keep records. They're working to restore habitat for salmon by creating log jams, planting trees, improving drainage. They work with a variety of partners, governments, federal and state, dairy and berry farms and others. We learned about the salmon life cycle, the work that's done at hatcheries. And importantly, we learned how education is an important part of their work, to educate the next generation of Lummi children, not only in the science, but also the cultural importance of continuing to care for salmon. So hopefully this has given you a sense of the organization, the type of content, and the educational strategies and tools that are built into the website for you and your students. There's one feature that I do want to show you real quickly. It's the student activity. So after students have watched the video, they'll get a check mark that they've completed each of these sites, the video, and then there's definitions of terms that are in the videos. There's an interactive that students can complete, showing this is the Mohawk, Akwesasne Mohawk section. This map is showing traditional Iroquois Confederacy territories in about 1730. The Mohawk people today, this is their modern day reservations located in upstate New York on the St. Lawrence River. The traditional Black Ash Range, and in this case, they're talking about the emerald ash borer infestation and the risk that that brings to the black ash trees and their cultural tradition of making black ash baskets. Notice that there's a check mark here that this section has been completed. And then there are 3 multiple choice questions here that students can answer. These are really here as content reinforcement. They can read the question, pick the answer that sounds the best to them, submit their answer. If it's right, they get a correct notice. If it's wrong, they get a try again, and then they can go on to the next question. We have built into this an activity that we call the story project. Let's say after watching this video, students want to go through and select some of the images that they saw that they think are really important to this part of the story. They really liked what this person said. They want an image of the black ash trees. They can select those. Then they can go into these blocks and they can type their notes and save them, and answering these questions here. that are there as prompts for the students. Save those. You go to your story project, and there are your notes, the images that you saved. This is a form that you can continue to populate as you go through the different sections of the case studies. And then there's a print feature that allows you to print these out. It comes out with their notes and with the images and the captions that go with them. So it's kind of a nice educational feature that's built right into the web page itself. We talked earlier about trying to understand the complexities of Native American perspectives. I hope our essential understandings and some of the things that you've heard in website videos will help you get a sense of what the real story is with Native Americans and the environment, as opposed to the 1970s ad. And I'd like to leave you with a couple of sources that I think are good additional examples of these relationships. There's lots of material out there. So you're kind of on the start of this journey, many of you. And I think as you begin to look at this in different ways now, you'll be able to find things that will help build your awareness and perception of Native Americans and their relationship with the environment and places. The Black Hills are considered sacred by the Lakota people. The area was part of treaty negotiations in the 19th century, and the lands were guaranteed to the Lakota or the Sioux in the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty. After gold was discovered in the Black Hills, these lands were taken in an illegal treaty with the Lakota and Sioux. The Lakota have never acknowledged this illegal treaty, and a legal fight has been ongoing ever since. But you can see here in this statement that this is in the foundation of Lakota beliefs, this place. It's not just a piece of land. It is where they believe they were created, where they emerged onto the earth from the underworld. And I'm a big fan of Native American literature and using it whenever we can. N. Scott Momaday is a Pulitzer-winning Native American author from the Kiowa tribe of Oklahoma. I'm going to read his poetic observations of a place because I think it sheds a little more light on Native perspectives about place, people's relationships with those places, and because maybe we can all use a little more poetry in our lives. But this comes from The Way to Rainy Mountain by N. Scott Momaday. He says, I remember coming out upon the northern Great Plains in the late spring. There were meadows of blue and yellow wildflowers on the slopes, and I could see the still sunlit plain below, reaching away out of sight. At first, there is no discrimination in the eye, nothing but the land itself, whole and impenetrable. But then the smallest things began to stand out of the depths, herds and rivers and groves, and each of these has perfect being in terms of distance and of silence and of age. Yes, I thought, now I see the earth as it really is. Never again will I see things as I saw them yesterday or the day before. So I want to thank the Native nations and people whose stories we've shared with you today. It's an honor to be able to make opportunities for your voices to be heard. I want to thank you all for joining me today. I hope that this has given you helpful information and ideas to support your education work.